You are now part of a social experiment.
See now where my limit is. Only got no.
Welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today on the journey towards self mastery. Our next guest was born and raised on the south side of Chicago. At 16 years old, he made a tragic mistake that would cost him 20 years in prison. After prison, he dedicated his life to giving back to his community and helping to be a part of the solution in Chicago. He now serves as a mentor, life coach, and violence interrupter to young Black males in Chicago, teaching them emotional intelligence and life saving decision making skills. He has been featured in the documentary All These Sons and is the author of the book Until the Lion Speaks. Let's welcome today Mr. Billy Moore to the program.
Thanks
How you
for
doing
having
today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Mr. G. Really appreciate being here.
The pleasure is mine, man. The pleasure is mine. And I think we spoke. I told you that I've actually been watching you for quite some time because in my classroom we play the Benji documentary, and it's something that I try to teach my students about. Looking into how to prevent violence in situations and things like that. And we always analyze, your situation and the piece in which you had that encounter. So it was something that was bit in the back of my mind. But what motivated me to kind of get you on the program was when I saw that you had connected with Benji's younger brothers, and they forgave you for the incident, and you guys pretty much hashed everything out and were able to really resolve that conflict. And I think that's super important for the Black community, for us to see things like that, because generally when things, like that happen, we think about retaliation and, I'm never forgiving dude. If I see him again, it's on sight kind of mind state. And I think it's powerful that y'all did that. And that's why I wanted to bring you on to the program. So I appreciate, the work that you're doing in Chicago, and your ability to just be humble and to seek forgiveness, I think is powerful.
I think the one important thing to understand is that when you're involved in something so tragic, it creates a lot of emotions. The raw emotions of grief, is what kind of motivates, retaliation and revenge, right? And then once you consider the fact that more so now than back then, a lot of people are really getting away with murder. The clearance rate is so low in Chicago that it's a high likelihood that if you kill somebody, you'll get away with it, right? So when people don't feel like there's no justice that will, prevail for them, when they lose someone, they tend to, revert to their own form of justice. And then, like I said, the grief of losing people are so strong and so deep. It creates these emotions, right, of anger. And for me to be able to, reconcile with Benji, two younger brothers, this was pretty much like, almost 30 years later. Of course, 30 years later, I wasn't the young man that pulled the trigger, and created the situation that led to Benji's death. And they wasn't the two young men who at the time lost their brother, although they were still grieving, because I don't think you ever stop grieving the loss of a loved one, right? But your the emotional content isn't as deep and isn't as raw 30 years later. It's a wound, but of course sometimes, wounds heal is not as deep. It leaves scars for you to always be able to look and remind yourself of how that wound was inflicted. But I think because them understanding or coming to understand what it was that I had been doing in my life, and I think also one of the brothers, Anthony, said that the reason why he was willing to forgive me was because he said literally on his mother's deathbed, the only thing she told him was that if you do nothing else, I need you to forgive the young man who took Benji's life away. And he told me, he was like, out of all the things that she would tell me before leaving this world, that was the one thing that she wanted me to do. So I had to honor that. And this is why I am, extending the forgiveness.
So looking at, your situation that occurred when you were 16 with Benji Wilson, I want to look at it from the standpoint of the way that I guess you try to teach your young men that you work with about, making good decisions and not having those type of moments. So I want to analyze that day and look at what was said, what was done, how it was handled, and what could have been done differently. So can you just start off with what that day started out being for you and walk us through that?
The thing that went wrong to begin with happened way before I even got up to the school. And
Mm.
what went wrong that morning was when I got that gun, right? As soon as you pick the gun up, I always say now, if whoever carrying a gun, you're going to get gun problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to
So
be so.
for those that don't know, why did you have a gun with you that day?
So the day before that, my cousin Cynthia, right, who went to Simeon, was at the Simeon school store, maybe a half a block away from the school, playing on one of the games, right? And some guy came from behind her and went inside her purse and took some money out. I think it was $10. And when she realized what was going on and turned around, asked him, for her money back, he basically proceeded to put the money down in front of his pants and told her, if you want it, come get it, right? So she like, okay, I'm going to get my money back. So she came and told me, her brother, a couple of my guys. So the next day, basically, we was going to get our money back, and being a young guy, 16 years old, I'm thinking in my mind, this gun is definitely giving me more of a presence, people going to respect, right? Never really quite fully understanding the consequences that can come with. But when you think about, you know how you thinking, but you don't know how this other person may be thinking. When you find yourself in that moment of approaching this person, right, who took this money, you just basically thinking, and I'm hoping that if he saw the gun, hey, he gonna bow down, he gonna get the money back, or maybe he gonna have. I'm never thinking he may have a gun too. That's from the 16-year-old mindset that, and also keep in mind, you posturing too, man, because like, man, I can't let nobody just disrespect my people like this, right? And accept that, right? But are you really ready to deal with what comes with all this, right? Not thinking. So anyway, long story short, we go up there. I know a couple of people in the neighborhood, and I talk to a guy who basically, everybody respect. I tell him what happened. He like, man, don't even trip. I know dude, and gave my cousin $20, right? So we just up there, and that was like early in the morning, like 9:30, 10 o'clock, right? We up there. So I got, family, other family and friends that go to Simeon, right? So I run into a chick named Erica, who I've been knowing, basically all my life. And I see her, right? And I'm like, man, what's happening? So after she come out to school, and we've been up there for a few hours, at least 2-3 hours, right? She come out, me and her walking, and I don't know Benji, right? She know Benji, but I don't know Benji. I guess they was probably maybe a half a block behind us. By the time we get back to the same store where the guy who took my cousin money at, Erica walks in the store. I'm standing outside the store, and out of nowhere, I get shoved from behind, right? It ain't like a little bump or tap. I get like purposely, intentionally shoved out the way. So as I gather myself, I fell into this other young lady standing next to me named Kim. I turns around just to see that I know whoever did this has to be coming with an apology. You know what I'm saying? Because it was just too hard, right? And I see the brother just keep walking. But man, he had to be the biggest dude I ever seen in my life. Right. Literally a giant, So I'm right now, I'm 56 years old. I'm 205 pounds. I'm 5'10". 16, I was 135 pounds and 5'6". Benji was 6'8". He had a trench coat on, right? So he looked more imposing, but he was slim, but he just looked in my mind, he was like a giant, right? I ain't never seen nobody that big in my life. But at the same time, it's like, man, bro, you just gonna disrespect me like that. And I asked him, ain't you gonna say excuse me? Long story short, he turned around and he was like, man, now what? Now I ain't saying excuse me. You know what I'm saying? I like what's up? You know what I'm saying? Now, as I look back on this whole situation years later and just trying to understand why did this occur, right? I came to find out some things, you know what I'm saying, Benji was going through. He had just been kicked out of school. He was up at school practicing because it was the game. It was the day before his first game of his senior year. And Benji had just got ranked #1 in the nation over the summer at a basketball camp. They had just won the state title in his junior year. So they was about to play the school that they beat in the state title. And this is going to be his first game. So he was coming to practice. But what happened was Benji had been suspended from school because he had punched the teacher the week before that. And I think the baseball coach saw him up there and told the principal that he needs to leave because when you suspend my players, you make them, serve out their suspension. That was one reason. Then come to find out he was walking with his girlfriend who had just had they baby about a month ago. And they had some issues where she wasn't letting him see the baby, right? And then it's been said that, Benji had a little thing going on with Erica, the young lady who I was walking with. So needless to say, Benji wasn't having a good day. And I believe it was some misdirected anger that got taken out on me, And because of the exchange, right, and the disrespect, and now I'm feeling, like I'm being punked, but I'm also saying that, damn, this dude here, he ain't bagging down, right? So I'm trying to tell him like, hey, okay, then you need to see this. And I unzip my jacket so he could see the gun, thinking that he gonna stand down. And man, what, he was like, man, so what you gonna do with that? Basically like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, damn, bro, you gonna make me pull this gun out, and use it. And what I don't want to happen is that you take this gun from me and use it on me because I don't know you. And his girlfriend, she getting hysterical and everything. She trying to put him away. The world come to find out what happened next. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, I felt like in that moment, I didn't have a chance but to defend myself, right? Now, I will say this, if we eliminate the gun, right, I don't know how the situation plays out. You know what I'm saying? But what I will say is that it's very likely Benji would probably still be here. You know what I'm saying? I don't know, but I think, when we that young and we have these issues of immaturity of how we try to handle conflict, that's why I talk about not having the emotional tools to really just address situations like that without it getting to the point to where it got. You know what I'm saying? How do we resolve conflicts in these moments where they don't end up becoming tragedies? You know what I'm saying?
So let's say like if we just do the we reverse it back and you have the same awareness that you have right now in the 16-year-old body of Billy Moore, how do you handle that same situation?
I can only, probably respond from where I'm at now mentally, right? I would like to think that if I had the same, maturity level that I have now at 16, of course, hey, look, bro, first and foremost, I think you can't take a lot of things personal when people don't know you. You know what I'm saying? It's them having a problem, not you. You know what I'm saying? And I think it's still a challenge for some men to walk away from certain situations, right? But for
Especially when hands has been put on you.
yeah, but by me having experience, you know what I'm saying, the loss of 20 years of my life and my mother dying on me in prison, and I suffered a lot. You know what I'm saying? I'm still here, but you know, I mean, I have been in those situations since then,
Mm.
and been able to deal with that in a way that everybody walked away. You know what I'm saying? Not even having to think about it no more. You know what I'm saying? But that's the challenge for young men who, for all intents and purposes, the only thing that they have is what they can claim is they rep, or beyond that they ain't got nothing else, so they gonna stand on that, they gonna protect it, right? But I think that situation plays out a lot, and it doesn't turn into tragedies for the most part. Unfortunately, they do happen. You know what I'm saying? Unfortunately, it happened then. I know that for me, I would never allow that situation to happen again. Me being a part of it, but it's hard to intercede in those situations because they play out with young men who aren't mentally, emotionally equipped with being able to deal with conflict in a moment like that, right? So we got to do the best we can by being active in young men's lives, particularly our own sons, right? And teaching them, what's important, and what's worth it and what's not worth it, and they'll see it, even though, you're trying to teach them. What's going to come across more as the way you live in your life too, you know. And I think that's one of the things that we suffering from, because a lot of our communities are so fractured. We don't have, men in the household raising these kids, or just strong, presence of men, teaching young boys how to think,
Yes,
through
sir.
problems,
Yes,
you
sir.
know.
Now, one of the things too, I know that you mentioned to boys when you talk about this incident is that you should have never been carrying around a gun. Now, we live in a situation, especially in Chicago, in the South Side of Chicago, where if a young man is used to carrying around a gun in order to feel protected, they might be like, "Yo, if I don't have my gun on me, you know what I'm saying, and everybody else does, then I'm gonna be at a disadvantage. I'm gonna be walking around unprotected." So, how do you maneuver through? Don't carry a gun, but everybody else in my hood has a gun and carries theirs.
So we deal in realism. I'm not telling nobody to put their gun down, unfortunately, right? Because I understand what's at stake. You know what I'm saying? But I will say this, for young men who are carrying guns, it's almost like being in the crap game and you got to roll 7 every time you shoot. Because it's easy to crap out. The police can get you. You know what I'm saying? You find yourself in a position where you got to use it. I understand that we have created these environments that are so unsafe, and you feel like you have to protect yourself, right? And it's unfortunate because it's a great paradox that's going on in America. They criminalize black people for carrying guns when certain communities raise their kids up before they can even barely walk. They teaching them how to use guns, right? So it's this double standard. You know what I'm saying? It's unfortunate that we are looked at, you know, as being threats, and we have to, we over criminalize the black community any way we can. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And if I mean a traffic stop result in black people sometimes losing their life, right? You don't
Right.
hear that in white communities. You know what I'm saying? Somebody get pulled over for a traffic violation, either they going home or they going to jail. They're not going to the morgue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But the narrative around, you know, black people being criminalized, you know what I'm saying, is something that is real. So when we talk about young black men carrying guns for their safety, you know what I'm saying, it's not realistic to tell the brother to put your gun down. but we do have to make you aware of the risk that you're taking. And are you prepared to deal with the consequences if, in fact, you find yourself either getting caught with it or having to use it? You know what I'm saying? So let's try to get these brothers thinking in the right state of mind so that we can get to the point to where everybody is carrying a gun, we can have them thinking, more safely. Like, we want to try to eliminate these hostilities that creates gun violence, right? By by getting more involved in these young cats' life and giving them something a little bit more than what they got now. Because most guys, you know, you show me a young black man with a gun, I show you a young black man with no hope. So what we got to do is create more hope. And the way we create more hope, it ain't just these little feel good, stories or quotes. We got to really start investing in their life, man, and giving them something more to look forward to. You know what I'm saying? Because these young cats, they're not babies, right? They got kids and they got responsibilities. They trying to live and survive and they trying to eat. You know what I'm saying? And the hustle game ain't what it was. You know what I'm saying? Uh, you know, back in the 90s where a cat could get a bag and he feed the whole block. Now you got to have a level of sophistication. They doing fraud, they cracking cards, and you may not be able to feed your whole team like that. You know what I'm saying? So people is hurting out here, man. People is starving and trying to survive, and they struggling, right? So the dynamics is a little different.
I look at your situation as a really huge like learning lesson for a lot of young cats that are dealing with some of these things. Another thing too is that with the prison system, a lot of times it creates a worse person like coming out, and then that's why a lot of us go back in once we're in there. But your situation was a little bit different. First off, like after the incident occurred, you got tried as an adult. I mean, this happened at 16 years old, man. Like, and you turned 17 when the court case occurred, and they tried you as an adult. So why do you think they tried you as an adult? And then how did you maneuver your sense of self, your self esteem for 20 years? And I know, like, you mentioned in your book too that you spoke to Larry Hoover, and he gave you some wise words, and you know that helped you out a lot too. But can you walk us through that, like why you got tried as an adult, and then how you manage emotionally and with your self esteem for the next 20 years?
So first and foremost, like I just talked about the criminalization of the black community, right? Is to really kind of always checkmate us, right? From the time they brought us over here and enslaved us, right? They always tried to find a way to checkmate us, right? So, we went through this long period of slavery, right? Where everybody, was property of somebody else. And then, black people were able to be free, right? And, when you think about even the United States Constitution, I'm sure you're aware of it, when the 13th Amendment, freed slaves, right? Ended slavery. The 14th Amendment, guarantees you due process, right? But with the exception of, you know, having a criminal offense could return you back into slavery, right? So they came up with vagrancy laws and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying in no way I'm great, right? But I believe greatness exists in everybody. At some point, hopefully it can manifest and you can, realize your greatness and you can come on, become a hell of a podcaster where you highlighting people's stories. You know what I'm saying? But did you think you was going to be doing this 15, 20 years ago? You know what I'm saying? Have you made any mistakes that didn't rise to the public awareness that could have sent you to prison? My mistake is for public opinion, public view now because it's a criminal conviction, right? If they could have got you at 16 and tried you as an adult, you don't think they would have? So they can stop you from even having a voice that can expose and amplify and magnify other people that are doing great things, you know. So they didn't know Billy Moore was going to be able to help other young men try to see down that dark tunnel, the light at the other end, because he traveled down it. They just wanted to make sure that I got lost in that tunnel. You know what I'm saying? That's why they close all our schools, because they don't want young black men, you know what I'm saying, growing up to be great. If we can kill them or put them in prison, you know what I'm saying, or put them in a situation that a criminal background going to always keep them checkmated, then that's what they're going to do, you know. So we have to learn how to complicate that narrative and not buy into it. You know what I'm saying? In spite of these obstacles that they put in front of us. A lot of times brothers go to prison because of the circumstances that they surviving in. They only left to do certain things. So, and basically they taking that chance. They shooting that dice, man. They trying not to crap out. You know what I'm saying? But it's a hard gamble because the circumstances that we exist in, the margins that we live in is so small. Once we step outside of them, you know, you're a felon, right? You didn't broke the law. Now, if I get caught, I know what the consequences is, and it's gonna be me going to prison. And now that I got this criminal conviction, it's almost impossible for me to have a fair chance to overcome that once I'm released. They say I paid my debt to society, but guess what? I'm still paying my debt to society because society expects me not to reoffend, but they're gonna put me in a position to reoffend because I'm never gonna have an opportunity to overcome that criminal conviction. They're going to criminalize my criminal conviction. No, you can't have a job because you went to prison. No, you can't go to school because you went to prison. No, you can't live over here because you went to prison. But they tell you, become a law-abiding citizen, never reoffend again when you get out, right? They never allow you, for all intents and purposes, to live beyond your criminal conviction. So, you know, it's hard, but it's not impossible. You know what I'm saying? For you to overcome that, you always gonna have some restrictions, right? But it's not impossible, and you just got to be willing, man, and make up your mind. You're gonna be as productive as you possibly can within the law, within the guidelines of the law, right? You just got to make up your mind. You're not gonna break the law. You know what I'm saying? And just believe that there's something out here for you that you can create for yourself, man, where it's helping other people or just, you know. But the thing about, to answer your question, man, I believe that at 16 years old, you know, for me to do what I did, you know, they created a way to, you know, adjudicate me as an adult, right? Because I don't think that they ever looked at us with the empathy and the compassion that you should have for a child, for a juvenile. They're going to always look at you as being, you know, as an adult, right? They don't
You know,
see.
you know, I'm thinking about the documentary, Benji's documentary, and the lawyer that was going against you. He's like, he's coming to grips with how hard he was going during the trial. And he was like, God, they're young. They're awfully young. He's like, they're awfully young. God, they're young. But he's like, I had to do my job. So it really made me think about that situation. Like if it was a 16-year-old white boy, I don't think that would be his take on that situation. You know what I'm
Hey,
saying?
you know what? Just think about during the time of enslavement. They didn't allow us to read or write. That was illegal. And guess what? When you was around 8 years old, that's when they put you in the field until you couldn't work no more. So they took the young bodies, kids, and they worked them as they was adults. They didn't invest in your mind to allow you to become educated, right? It's no different today, bro. They want to get you as young as you can. They want to create circumstances to make it so vulnerable for you to fall through the cracks. And they're gonna throw the book at you. They don't care nothing about you being a kid. They're gonna take your young body and throw it in that prison. You know what I'm saying? And hopefully your mind never grows beyond that. So you can continue to repeat the cycle over and over again in your life.
And just to highlight what you're just saying right now too, when you got into the prisons, like you mentioned in your book, like they tried to take your life, right?
Yeah, when I went to the Cook County Jail Division 6, you know, and this is during the time of the '80s, bro. They was in there killing people left and right, hanging people, beating people to
Mm.
death. And that's just what the culture was. I had two uncles that worked in the county jail, and I just read the play. I knew something wasn't right. I wrote my mother's number down and told the guy, I say, listen, man, call my mother, tell her to get in touch with my uncle because it looked like they about to do something to me and get out here right now, right? And they accused me of using gang talk, right?
Mm.
So they have this way of addressing guys that's in prison, and you supposed to respond by saying, yes, sir, I'm an inmate, right? They asked me what gang I was in. I didn't know no better. I told them, and they proceeded to jump on me. And then they took me in the boiler room in the basement of Division 6 and said that I was basically going to write a letter to my mother saying I couldn't cope.
Mm.
So because I knew that I had gave this guy my mother's number and told him to call her and have my uncle and them come out here, I was just hoping that he did it, one, and two, that they answered, right? And both happened. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Because they basically told me I wasn't walking up out the boiler room alive.
Wow.
And this was the second day after I had turned 17 years old, you know? And I knew right at that moment that, man, if I walk up out this boiler room, then whatever I have to deal with, you know what I'm saying? I'm going to be prepared to deal with it because I couldn't allow myself, to fold and just, just without a fight. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. And
But yeah,
after that whole incident, you mentioned too in your book that you ran into, Larry Hoover. You guys had the same lawyer and everything, and he put you guys together. And he told you some real positive words that really encouraged you. So can you share with us what that conversation was with Larry
yeah.
Hoover?
So, and Larry was he was charged. He was charged along with 16 other guys for starting a riot that he didn't start in this prison called Pontiac, and they became known as the Pontiac 17. If you look them up, it's this thing. It's real big, right? And during that trial, when they was actually on trial for their life because 3 prison guards in Pontiac was killed, right? So they was charging Larry and all them. But the lawyer who represented Larry at that time on the Pontiac 17 and some of the other guys became my lawyer, Skip Gant. So when I caught my case, right, Skip was like, man, I represented Larry, right? So make sure, you check in with him when you go down there, right? So when I hit Stateville, one of the guys was like, man, Chief wanna holler at you, man, So I'm like, damn, like this Larry, you know what I'm saying? Like this dude like a urban legend, you know what I'm saying? And I'm about to meet him, right? So, when I go over there, he was like basically like, man, what you gonna do? You know? So I'm like half starstruck and half like don't want to say the wrong thing to look stupid, right? And he was like, man, I'm gonna tell you what you're gonna do. You're gonna go to school. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna go to school. Just simple as that. And it was like, shit, okay. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to school, right?
You were.
you know,
OG said it. Yep.
yeah, because he basically was like, man, we need people, man, not just on this end. We need people on that end too. You need people thinking, man, educating themselves, right? Moving the needle in the community. Larry is a true organizer, and I think Larry loved black people. And man, I can say that not only did I go to school and get my GED in prison, I got my associate's degree in prison, and I got my bachelor's degree since I've been home. You know what I'm saying? And it was all because, not so much because Larry told me to, but that's what kicked it off. But, I realized that, education will open up doors for people. And in spite of the fact of what you look like, the color of your skin, or what you may have in terms of your background, education still open up doors. People respect a level of education, right? Which will leverage and mitigate any of that other stuff that people will look down on, you know. And I wanted to tell young brothers that listen, man, education still has a level of value and respect that you will get from people if you have it. And that was one of the reasons why I went back to school, because I don't want to be saying this and didn't really show that I had this. It's like these young cats, like, man, you have to have your credibility ain't what you say, it's what you do, it's what you got, what you done earned. So, and I ain't really the school type of dude, but I felt it was important that, I got my education, man, because I wanted to give these brothers a real message. I wanted to be the message that I bring. If I can do it, I know you can do it, man.
So every day I'm going hard. I'm talking business, bank accounts, and credit cards. And somehow we defeat the odds and making sure that no one starves illegal. All you had to